Yes, lads, welcome back to the channel. We've had season predictions for the Premier League, we've had game week 1 predictions, and now we've got a game week 1 review. The Premier League is back. It was a great weekend. Not so many twists and turns, some big results for some teams though. So we're going to get into this. We're going to cover 5 games in more detail, but we'll also touch on the other 5 games as well. Had to wait, of course, for Leeds Everton last night. I really thought I might be talking about it in more detail. I thought it was going to be a good game. Everton, not looking good so far, but we'll get into all that anyway. But let's start with the 5 games that we have first. So yeah, let's get into this. So up first, how could I not cover this one first? It's Sunderland up against West Ham. Now, I have West Ham very low down in the league in terms of my season predictions, and I was very keen to see how they would set up and how they got on against the Sunderland team, who realistically came up last season. But they were the second best team in the playoff semi-finals. And yes, they got the job done in the final. But out of all the teams and the squad and the capabilities, I didn't have Sunderland going up last year. So Sunderland, they've done a lot of work off the pitch to get ready for this weekend. 3-0 winners on the day. West Ham, they may have dominated the ball, but it was Sunderland that got the result. And I have to say, the place was bouncing. Sunderland fans, let me know. I was very confused at a few empty seats in the ground. Was that an issue? Some sort of protest? Whatever it might have been. I just couldn't quite understand why it wouldn't be full on the first game back in the Premier League. But as I say, 3-0 winners were Sunderland. Man of the match, I'm going to give it to Dan Ballard. First of all, what a header. But secondly, his defensive actions are so good. I've seen Sunderland have signed a couple of centre-backs. They're linked with one more at the moment. I believe it's Lucimi. Okay, maybe they need the squad depth, but Dan Ballard has to start for me. He is everything that you love about a Sunderland team. Really good in the air in terms of defensively and defensively, and the blocks, man. This guy blocks everything. So Dan Ballard, man of the match, made the step from the Championship. I thought he was ready. I thought he was ready for the Premier League, regardless of Sunderland going up. And if they didn't go up, I think he would have been purchased by someone, coincidentally, like a West Ham. But Dan Ballard, man of the match, great performance from him. The biggest flop is going to be a West Ham player, of course, and there was a couple to choose from, if I'm going to be honest. I've gone with Hermansen. Listen, I think he's a good goalkeeper. I think he'll have just had a bad first game for West Ham, but he should have done better on 2 of the goals. Like, you know, as a goalkeeper, safe hands is what you want to have, especially when it's your first game for your new club. He didn't have that. That's why they conceded at least 2, as I say. So Hermansen, with work to do, has to build that confidence up. West Ham still have Areola for now, so maybe if Hermansen does struggle to adapt to life at West Ham, Areola can step in, but he needs more time, but it was a disappointing debut. Up next, we've got Wolves against Manchester City. I covered this one because this was a real sign of intent from Manchester City. I feel as though they sometimes start slow. I feel as though they have a few results where you look back at the end of the season and think, God, you know, they dropped points to Wolves. Can you imagine that? But no, they were on it from the off. Very, very impressive performance. Before the game, I said Erling Haaland, he's their key player. He's the one to watch. Quiet last season. I knew he was going to come back strong, and he has. 2 goals on the first week. He was my FPL captain as well. I'm currently sat top of the league in FPL. So yeah, this is what I do, clearly. But another player, Reindeers, wow, what a debut from him too. Again, a real example of how Man City are going to build differently this year. The wingers, far more attacking and deadly, but also in centre midfield. Rodri will do the sit-in when he's back, and Reindeers will be the box-to-box, up and down. The finish on the weak foot, unbelievable too. So, man of the match, I've gone for Erling Haaland. I could have gone for Reindeers though, and maybe in the future, he might overtake Haaland as their most important player. But yeah, Haaland, man of the match, he is back. He is looking like he could be a monster once again. Biggest flop might be a harsh title for this one, but I've gone with Jose Sarr, conceding 4 goals. Don't get me wrong. I think you were up against Man City when they are absolutely firing. I don't necessarily think he could have done any more for the goals as well. So I'll just go down as Jose Sarr, just as someone who, as I say, conceded 4 goals. As for Wolves, a disappointing start to the season, but there's no reason to panic. Manchester City, as I say, at their best. So what I will say, it'll be very interesting to see what Wolves do in the transfer window for the remaining 2 weeks. If they can get a few more bodies in, they might find themselves away from the relegation zone. But for me, as I said in my predictions, Leeds and Sunderland are going to be stronger than people think, and someone's got to go down. Wolves with a lot of work to do after this first week. Up next, Tottenham up against Burnley. Final score, it was 3-0 to Tottenham, and it was a dominating victory for them. But I will say, Burnley did have a few chances, especially on the counter. They actually looked quite deadly. But the Tottenham defence, very strong. Burnley's attack, also not the best. They will get better as the season goes on, but as things stand right now, they're not the best, and it sort of showed. What was very good was Tottenham's attack, and one man in particular, my man of the match, and that is Richarlison. Will Thomas Frank get the best out of Richarlison? Scary words to even say aloud, because realistically, as many other people thought, Richarlison's time at the top level was probably done. But here we are in a World Cup season. World Cup, of course, in June next year. Is Richarlison good enough to push himself back into that Brazil team? If he keeps playing like this, he will be. What an overhead kick he scored as well. A bit of Brazilian flair. Also, though, amongst a good physical performance, he looks like the real deal. It's going to be very interesting to see who gets the nod when everyone's fit, him or Solanke. Will Thomas Frank rotate and have different players and different profiles against different opponents? Maybe so, but Richarlison stole the show for me, and realistically, a player that I don't think anyone expected to have a great start to the season like that. It was a debutant that also stole the show for me, and that is Kudus, and he just looks fantastic. I think last season at West Ham, I don't think West Ham has been a good place to be as a player for many seasons now, unless your name's Jared Bowen, of course, but West Ham, not that good. Kudus, he showed glimpses at West Ham last season, but slowed down. Have we seen the best version of Kudus at Tottenham in his first game? I think so. And if this is where he's going to build from, Tottenham have got themselves such a good player. The Kudus that by far should be playing Champions League football, and I'm very keen to see how he does from this point out now. Kulusevski's to come back. Those two, I think it's going to be absolute fireworks. So Tottenham fans, let me know, are you as excited as I am for you guys? Because it looks as though you've got a great attack. As I say, Burnley, they gave it a good go. They had a few chances. They need to get better chances in order to do anything in this league. One of the chances, the penalty shout, Pedro Porro, I think it was a penalty. Kyle Walker gets the ball on the right-hand side, overhits a pass. It's a poor pass from Kyle Walker. But Jadon Anthony's running through the middle, and Pedro Porro, unneeded, just sort of gives him a shove in the back. To me, it's a penalty. It's off the ball, no intent for the ball. So yeah, Pedro Porro may be a bit fortunate to not give away a penalty there, but that does bring me on to my flop of the day, and that is going to be Kyle Walker. I just think I was expecting a bit more. I was expecting him to have a real bit of leadership in that team, and don't get me wrong, he can't do it himself, but overall, the level that he should be at, the sort of experience he has, I expected more. I didn't see it. Unfortunately, Kyle Walker, flop of the day, game week 1. Up next, Liverpool up against Bournemouth. What a game this was. Friday night, the Premier League is back, and it was a great advert for why we all love Premier League football so much. It was maybe ruined in the first half for a moment with the racial comments directed at Semenyo. I remember watching it and thinking, Jesus, like, why is that guy in the wheelchair so aggressively giving some sort of comment to Semenyo? And, you didn't think much more of it. The long throws, all very prevalent this season so far. So the game went on, it got called back, and rightfully so, he was kicked out. And it's just, it was 0-0, 20-something minutes back into the season. A very strange thing to do, and I hope he never sees Anfield again, because it's just disgusting. And Semenyo, fair play to him. What a way to show that they haven't affected you, those comments, because he goes on to score 2 goals. He will go down as me for man of the match. Listen, I was very impressed with Ekitike. I was impressed, of course, with Mohamed Salah. I was also impressed with Gakpo. That front three, they could be very good. Do they need Alexander Isak? I'm going to say no right now. But I was also impressed with Szoboszlai as well, showed his versatility. So I could have given it to many players, but I've decided to give it to Semenyo. Some great goals, and he was really the spearhead in Bournemouth getting back into the game. Just such a shame that he had to hear those comments. What I will say, the referee dealt with it very well, and I was a bit confused at what was happening first, but once you realise what had happened, fair play to the ref because he dealt with it very well. But as I say, Liverpool looking very, very deadly in front of goal, as they did last season. I did think that the new signings would take a bit of time to gel, and we saw that very much with Florian Wirtz. Now, it was not a bad debut for him, and he showed glimpses of being a really good player. However, it just felt as though that the physicality and the sort of aggression in the Premier League teams is something that he might not have faced just yet. He was very lax on the ball. He gave the ball away more times than anyone in the whole game. And it was a little bit frustrating just because it was like, when he did do good things, it was like, yeah, okay, he's here. But I just think he needs to just settle down a little bit, get a little bit quicker in terms of how fast he moves the ball. But listen, Liverpool fans, nothing to worry about. I think you've got a real player in there. Same with Ekitike. He looks to be the real deal too. Exciting times for Liverpool. They do have to sort out the defence at the back. The defence did look a bit shaky at times. Van Dijk, who I've put down as their key player, is going to have to get that defence locked in and very firm because, Kirkes and Frimpong, they look to be exploited at times in terms of going forward too much, and Kirkes a bit aggressive into the tackle. So yeah, they're going to have to sort those little problems out. But overall for Liverpool, it was a decent turnout. Flop of this game is going to be Konate, and it was just because, as I mentioned with the defence, there was a few errors. They didn't look as solid as we've seen Liverpool look in the past. Konate was the sort of forefront of it. I do think Liverpool need to sign a new centre-back. If Mark Gahey comes in, Konate will go out of the squad, not necessarily leave the club, but he'll go out of the squad. So yeah, Konate with a lot of work to do. You could see it wasn't his usual standard, in all fairness to him, but a very difficult start to life for him in the new season. Up next, it is Manchester United against Arsenal. I was so looking forward to this game. It finished 1-0 to Arsenal, but let's be honest, Manchester United will be kicking themselves. They didn't get a point or more. It was a different Manchester United side. Now, last season, the final game of the season, Manchester United played against Villa. Villa needed to win to get Champions League football. Manchester United, they were out of everything. It was literally a nothing game for them. They just lost to Tottenham in what was arguably the worst European final we ever may watch. It was such a poor standard of football. Manchester United came back to Old Trafford and something changed. They were a different team against Villa on that final game of the season. They got the win. Yes, there was a few controversial moments, but regardless, they outplayed Villa from start to finish. I was sat there watching it thinking, where has this come from? You've been awful all season. So for me to then watch them play against Arsenal with a few new signings too, I was actually pleasantly surprised that they'd kept the same form as they finished the season with, and they just looked like a new team. You can see now a clear identity of what Amorim's trying to do, and I did have my doubts about him. I thought he might have been exposed, but you can see it. You can see the vision he's trying to create. And with that, Mbeumo and Cunha look like great additions to the Manchester United squad. And I will say as well, Mason Mount had a fantastic game, arguably one of the best players on the pitch, which to say that about Mason Mount is crazy. I was saying in the group chat, who's replaced Mickey Mount with Mason Mount, because it was a different player here. And seriously, he has a serious chance to push himself back into that England squad. It's early days. He's got a horrible injury record. I'm not going to get carried away, but that was Mason Mount back at his best. Someone who was an England regular when he was at his best. But Mbeumo, Cunha, as I say, they really fit into this system well. They were causing all sorts of trouble. Mbeumo more so to start with, and then Cunha definitely warmed into the game. David Raya made some great saves against the Man United players, and I really did think United could have had one or two. In terms of Arsenal and the goal they scored, Bayandia, hold your head in shame. As a goalkeeper, you've got to do better. Manchester United linked heavily with Emi Martinez. I, of course, know him so well. If Emi Martinez was in goal, that does not happen, plain and simple. And many other goalkeepers as well, for that matter. Bayandir, weak in the punch. It didn't go anywhere. Saliba never fouled him. And yeah, Manchester United ultimately paid the price for that mistake. Touching then on Arsenal, a good 3 points, especially away at Old Trafford. Very, very good to get 3 points in the first game of the season as well. But there is a lot of work to do for Arsenal. And a lot of Arsenal fans gave me a lot of stick for saying that Gyökeres was going to take some time to transition to the Premier League. And I think it's clear. I think it's clear as day. I know it's only one game and you can't go off all of it, but Victor Gyökeres was horrific. Therefore, Victor Gyökeres is the flop of the game for me, because there was so much expectation. I really thought this was a chance for him to shush everyone up, like myself, who said he needed time or he wasn't going to cut it, and go and actually score some good goals, or at least show glimpses of play where it's like there's a player there. Gary Neville said he saw glimpses. Gary, I don't know what you were watching, to be fair, mate, because there was none for me. There was several moments where you thought he had the ball. The one that I look at in particular, the one where he was on the left-hand side, driving into the Manchester United box. It got caught up in his feet. It went backwards. He then fouled one of the Manchester United players tracking back. Listen, I do think he's a good player. I'm not saying he's not, but he needs time. And it might take as long as a season. So when I put Arsenal fourth, this is the reason why. However, they still showed some good glimpses. Odegaard had a great game. Saka, I was thinking I need to do a request a bet for him to do the Saka limp because he was awful. Martinelli, all right, but realistically, Rice, Zubimendi, and Odegaard, very solid. Gabriel and Saliba started very shaky, but did sort of warm into the game. David Raya. So when you look at the spine of that team, up to Gyökeres, it's solid enough. So Gyökeres needs to join the party, but Arsenal, 3 points on the day. They won't care. They'll go back with so much confidence from this game. So yeah, let's see how they get on in the next game against Leeds, a Leeds side that picked up the win against Everton. So they'll be full of confidence, but Arsenal back at home needs to do more. Manchester United, they need to go into their next game and just keep that same energy. Because man of the match for me, it was Cunha. He was just phenomenal, and I'm just very keen to see how this Manchester United side all fits together. Sesko, are we going to see him next? Will he get the start? I think he should stick with Mason Mount. I think they look better doing that before Sesko came on the pitch, but all credit to Sesko. He only had 20 minutes. Let's just give him cut him a bit of slack. So yeah, good game. Good advert to why Premier League football is back and we're so excited. That is my 5 games. Let's go on to the remaining 5 and just give a bit of information on them. On now to Aston Villa up against Newcastle. The game finished 0-0, and it was basically a game where both teams sort of cancelled each other out a little bit. Of course, the first half, Newcastle miles better. Villa looked like they were in a pre-season friendly. Bizot, the new goalkeeper, fair play to him. Second half, Villa did come out a lot better, and Newcastle then obviously saw themselves go through one-on-one with Anthony Gordon. Konza, he's grabbed at Gordon's shoulder. Not enough contact, but enough contact in today's game to go down. The referee was left with no choice. I tried to dispute it when it happened, but realistically, it took one replay to change my mind. It's a red card, and for me personally, I would much have preferred for Konza to have just let him run through and see what happens. Go 1-0 down, but at least we've still got 11. But ultimately, maybe it saved the point. Regardless, no team could find the winner. 0-0, probably a fair result, but yeah. Disappointing starts for both teams, really. They'd of course wanted to score a couple of goals, but enough to take into the next couple of games with a bit of confidence, I guess. Brighton 1, Fulham 1 was the next game. Brighton will be bitterly disappointed they didn't hold out. I do think Brighton were the better team and showed a lot of signs that they're going to be a serious contender to try and push into Europe this year. Fulham, it's not looking too good. Emile Smith-Rowe had a very average game for me, and he's supposed to be the main man this season. But yeah, 90th minute goals. We've seen them all through the EFL. The Premier League has them, of course, too. Rodrigo Muniz with the goal to bring Fulham level. It was incredible. I loved seeing Paul Merson. 90th minute, yeah, this is game over. 92nd minute, yeah, game over. 1-0 Brighton. And then, of course, it did happen. So, yeah, if you haven't seen that clip, go and watch it. It was a very, very funny watch. Chelsea Palace, this finished 0-0. Lots of controversy about the free kick goal. Look, whether it says it in the rule book or not, there's not enough consistency in this league at all, especially with the refereeing decisions. It should have stood. In my opinion, it should have stood. Eze's hit it. I don't think he's really blocked the view of the keeper or anything like that. Robert Sanchez, it was just hit really hard and it was a difficult shot to save. It should have stood. The game finished 0-0 though. Chelsea showed some glimpses. They're going to need to warm into the season a bit more. Palace looks so deadly on the counter. Mateta, Eze, etc. The fear for Palace though is that if they do lose Gay and they do lose Eze, I don't necessarily know how well they'll do. I want to also give a special shout out to Adam Wharton, who played very well, and Munoz, who also played very well. And one for Chelsea, Caicedo. That guy is a machine. Notts Forest up against Brentford now. 3-1 winners on the day. Brentford, it's looking quite bleak in my opinion. There wasn't much to go off that made me think this is a team that can stay up. I think the fact that they've spent £41 million on one player when the squad needed maybe 2 or 3 upgrades. Listen, there's still time. Will they go and make those signings and upgrade the squad? I hope they do, because if they don't, I think Keith Andrews, We'll see his Brentford side go down. As for Forest, though, exciting news off the pitch. Amari Hutchinson, James McAtee, Douglas Luiz, the latest name to be linked. They're doing some serious bits of business. And yeah, they look the real deal on the pitch. Chris Wood looks just as sharp as when they left. And yeah, I'm very concerned as a Villa fan that Forest might finish above us this season after watching that. But all credit to them. Ndoye as well with the debut goal. Fair play. It's looking all right for Forest. Finally, Everton and Leeds. Everton, shocking first half. Really, really poor. They just didn't show any signs. They, of course, had Grealish and new signing Barry on the bench. But then Leeds, they did play very well. Tanaka, shout out, absolute workhorse for this Leeds team. But ultimately, Leeds got the penalty in the second half. Everton were a bit better. Leeds maintained a decent level throughout. They got their penalty. The handball, I think it's really harsh. I do. I understand that it's not the fact that his arm is in an unnatural position. It is, and they've agreed that it is. It's the fact that Tarkowski leans his body into the direction of where the ball's going as to why it's a penalty. So whether you like it or not, I think they've got that one on a technicality by the rules. And so, so realistically, it had to be a penalty. And Lucas Nemecha finished it off. 1-0 winners on the day. Leeds looking like a good side, same as Sunderland, showing a bit of intent. Everton, work to do. David Moyes will make sure this team is sorted. But once the season gets going, he'll have players like Jack Grealish that feature more regularly. I'm sure Barry as well, because Beto, not the best player in the world. So yeah, Leeds 1, Everton 0 to kick off the new season. So that is the end of the Premier League review. A great weekend of Premier League football. Very exciting games. So yeah, we're now going straight into next week. So I'll have the Premier League preview for the next set of games out at some point this week. Very excited to watch that. But if you are enjoying the content, please do subscribe. I'm here all season. I'm looking to up the content as well. I've got a few ideas that are taking place. So subscribe, get the bell on, do all of that stuff. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.